Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today with episode 109 of the H.A.M Radio Podcast.
And it is me from down under, the LoneVaultWanderer.
It's me, Karak, from ACG.
And we are joined by Mitchell Sabach. You are a patron, but you also have a really awesome position, don't you, my friend?
Yes. So last year, I happened to have interned at Bethesda Softworks as a QA tester for Skyrim Special Edition. And I have to say, it's been one of the more incredible experiences that I've had in recent memory.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for supporting us. And we're going to be talking about that later on in the podcast, your experience with Bethesda and just the process of QA testing in general. But we have so much to cover this week, ladies and gentlemen. It's been something in these past 2 weeks. It's like E3 came early almost with all these reveals and stuff. But let's start off with all these games. I want to kind of just get a gauge. What's everyone playing right now? Because there's so much that's been coming out, and it's all been pretty good, in my opinion. You know, it's Prey, Surge, Injustice 2. If anyone's playing anything that's overlapped from previous months, like, what are you guys on right now?
Well, for me, obviously I finished Prey, but I'm playing Outlast 2 now. And that came out, what was it, last month, I think?
Yeah.
And I couldn't play it because Prey was out. But I tell you what, like, if you've played the first Outlast, you know how many like jump scares that are in that game. It's much of a scarier game. Outlast 2 is a bit more, I guess, messed up. It's a bit more gory. It's a bit more... It doesn't go for the cheap jump scare as often, even though they're still in there. It's more of an intriguing horror game as opposed to this kind of scary game. And even though it's kind of fucked up, like some of the letters you read in that game really messed up stuff, like really dark subject matter, like someone wrote that fucking thing. It's insane. But when you detach yourself from that, it's more enjoyable, I think, from the first game. So,
wow. I'll go last.
All right, Mitchell, what are you playing, man?
Recently, I've had the chance to play both Prey and Little Nightmares, and I recently finished the latter. So, with regards to Little Nightmares, it's a bit like Limbo, is that it's a puzzle platformer that's set in a dark, gloomy environment that's full of terrifying creatures that you have to evade, as well as solving environmental puzzles in order to make your way through, in order to make your way through the environment that also happens to have a lot of storytelling baked into it. So if you played Limbo inside Playdead's works, then you probably know what to expect from Little Nightmares. The difference is that unlike Inside and Limbo, Little Nightmares is actually 3D. So basically, it's still on a 2D plane, but the difference is that you can move not just it's not just left and right. You can also move around the environment like you're exploring it in an adventure title. It does have a few benefits and disadvantages. The benefit is that it does broaden exploration, and it does lead to some, deeper and more elaborate puzzles, especially when you have to push aside objects during the chase scenes, which I have to say, I really liked, what Limbo and Inside had to offer in terms of tension and also hair-induced and hair-raising situations where you have to flee your foes. But Little Nightmares, good God, not that they scared the crap out of me, but they were just so unsettling. The enemy designs are quite simply some of the most grotesque and repulsive individuals that I've ever seen in recent memory.
Wow.
And I have to say, the final few bits of Little Nightmares really did it for me. Not just in terms of action, but just in terms of showing its themes. So obviously, with such games that bear ambiguous narratives, there is a message of sorts baked into the characters' actions and their surroundings. And without spoiling anything, there are a few moments in that game where you're questioning your character's morality. And my only
No?
a bit.
Hello?
My only reservation is that you can't really... there's no opportunity for making choices. You just watch the character do their own thing. So whenever you encounter a situation where you feel like you're about to do something horrid, you really don't have much of a say on what your character can do. All you have to do is really do the thing and just watch as your character, suffers the consequences. I mean, it's potent, but when you're replaying the game multiple times, it really doesn't lend itself well to subsequent playthroughs because you already know what's going to happen, and you can't really go in a different route. You just have to watch. Those moments are potent, but second or third time through, they start losing their impact.
This is what happened when you start talking to fans of RPGs like Fallout, Elder Scrolls, etc., that are so used to choice in games that when you don't get choice in games, it feels fucking weird. Like, wait a minute, why can't I choose whether to save or to kill this person, Why can't I choose it at this particular story point, and why doesn't that affect the main story in the end? There's a bit of it. I remember the other week, Karak was talking about motor setting your, like before you play another game after finishing one. Because
it's motor
so
setting
different.
your expectations for how the narrative's delivered.
Because I think that there's obviously a good place for games that don't have choice. Like, so sometimes you don't want to have to choose. You just want to be able to experience a story that's more movie-like, if you will. But
yes, sorry. Yes,
go ahead.
I concur. Especially with Fallout 4, I think the addition of a voice, really limited the amount of roleplay you can do in that game. Because when you have a voice, you also have a personality. You already have a particular mindset that's baked into the character, and that already kind of defines their arc. It does lead to a more focused narrative, yes, but when it comes to the experience of, playing as a different character, and because RPGs are built on replayability, the idea of having a purpose, a particular purpose that grows and that you set on your character and the environment as you go about your business, and having your choices matter not just to yourself, like stats, XP, and weapons, but also from a environmental standpoint, like how is this going to affect the people around you as well as the environment. Like, this is what makes an RPG an RPG. It's not, XP, quests, etc., etc. It's like saying that a stealth game is just about light and shadow. That's just the surface details. Stealth is all about finding out things that you're not supposed to know. And whereas RPGs is about having a palpable purpose that you bake into your character and the environment through your actions. So when people say Fallout 4 was disappointing to most players, it was because that purpose wasn't as, bespoke in terms of them crafting their own arc as they would have liked. And compare that to the likes of previous Fallout games, especially New Vegas, as well as other Bethesda titles such as Morrowind, which recently celebrated its 15th anniversary. Those types of games really gave the player an opportunity to express themselves in that they're able to create a difference, like a difference that really makes their hard work pay off in spades. Definitely. So having that kind of element diluted, in an RPG experience can cripple the experience unless you have the overall gameplay or other aspects, other design aspects you back it up. I think that's what Fallout 4. That's what Fallout 4 did in terms of improve shooter mechanics, the settlements, etc., in order to still be a worthwhile Fallout experience.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing, is like, not every game is an RPG, obviously, but you have games that present like a choice consequence, and like a Prey. They try to present that, and it's like, well, I don't view Prey as an RPG really, but it kind of has those elements to it. I have a lot of gripes with that game. I'm not gonna lie. I know I'm very much outnumbered on that. Especially as I thought about the ending more and more. I was like, no. Like, I'm just...
No. We could talk about this all day.
We could.
And we won't give spoilers, but...
We should do a spoiler cast in a couple of weeks.
We need to do a spoiler cast, but let's just say that in the end, I'm disappointed by the... I'm not going to say, but I thought the choices would matter more. But anyways, Karak, talk about your games.
Yeah, Karak, what have you been playing, man?
Oh, first time I've ever lost my train of thought on a podcast. What were we asking?
What have you been playing?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Injustice and Farpoint. Farpoint's the PSVR game. And then Injustice is just fantastic. Like, fantastic.
How is Farpoint?
I rated it a wait for a deep sale. I thought it was, I think, rated against other VR titles, not against normal shooters, right?
Yeah.
But other VR titles, it's got some really cool elements like cutscenes and voice acting and good voice acting. Some pretty okay mechanics, but as a game, the thing is if you have friends who've never played VR, this might be a good title to let them see. It reminds me of Batman, the experience, because a lot of folks like that. But as a game, like, it does very little, and it does some pretty it takes some pretty terrible conveniences, like resetting enemies in front of you, which I don't think I remember a game that's ever done that. But if an enemy leaps past you, instead of you turning around, which you can, which is weird, but the enemy will run back in front of you and then turn around like a football lineman saying, "I'm offside, sorry, my bad." And it's just really, really weird, and that happens throughout the entire title. So, when it comes to Farpoint, the aim controller's okay, but for me, when somebody says, "My God, I felt like I was in a battle because I held my hands versus this," and somebody else says, "I felt the same way holding my hands like this," I'm sort of that group. Just because I move one hand forward doesn't make me magically suddenly think I'm there and start sweating bullets. But some people are like that. I had one friend who came over, and he was trying a Vive game, and there's an adapter you can buy that basically feels like a gun, and he was far more in depth into that and sort of bought into it than if you just hold them separate. I get it, but it's archaic hardware, and AIM require you to buy another fucking piece of hardware. Like, they already said you need to buy the Move, and so it's like some people bought the Move, bought the PSVR, and then they turn around and say PS4 Pro is really the better version of VR anyway, and now they're like, buy the AIM controller too. And it's just, it's VR for console. It's just not working out so well. At least it's selling well.
I think it was timely then that, again, another piece of news we can't talk about, but HTC released their own standalone VR that you don't need a PC, you don't need a console. And it's not such an expensive endeavor, really, when it's an all-in-one package, especially when you consider that you need to buy this other gun or this other controller, or you bought the original Oculus, but you really need the motion sensors, like the motion controls, for it to work even better. So,
I hope that this, I hope that the fact that having to buy several peripherals in order to play VR games is not going to spell the end of virtual reality, because I remember around the turn of the decade, the 2010s, when 3D was still big, and you saw Microsoft and Sony, they were advertising the Move and Kinect to their fullest. And at the time, I'll admit, I bought into the hype of both the Move, because at the time, I mainly gamed on Sony consoles, and I also invested in a 3D TV. But actually, it wasn't a bad investment, because along with the 3D, I also got a much smoother frame rate, a much better refresh rate. So that meant that I could play games like I remember playing Kingdom of Amalur Reckoning on my PS3. Normally, that game runs at 30 frames per second, but because of my TV, it felt like 60. So, so essentially, I bought it for the 3D, and I kept it for the frame rate. But yes, 3D, unfortunately, the bar of entry was too high, and again, I hope that doesn't happen to VR and 4K because the technology is intriguing. In fact, if you remember around the mid-2000s, when you saw games like Half-Life 2, Far Cry, Doom 3, and Fear, they signaled the transition to HD gaming, but also introduced advanced lighting effects, bigger maps, advanced physics, and better AI. And this signaled the start of a new generation and also the potential to leverage new technology in order to create, experiences that felt more visceral. I especially remember when ragdoll physics became much more common around that time period. And we're still seeing this technological leveraging with games like Shadow of Mordor and War with the Nemesis system, which I think is a great approach to dynamic and also a granular storytelling, a bit like the narrative Legos that Ken Levine talked about back in 2014. That's intriguing technology. My only concern is I wish there was more of this, leveraging, because if we are to advance the gaming medium, we have to make sure that we don't create experiences that are just better iterations of what already has come before it, but essentially trying to capitalize on the new devices and hardware that we have in order to manufacture the kind of games that wouldn't have been unimaginable a few years back.
True. So, for me, I've been playing... I've been hopping between a lot of games lately, actually, because I'm looking at my list. I reviewed Prey. I'm sorry, Prey, like I said, I just didn't really like that game all that much. Not a bad game, but it just didn't click with me well. After that, I went back, started chipping away at Nier Automata again. I'm on the middle of my third playthrough.
God.
Well, it's actually, a third playthrough is actually, how do I word it? Each playthrough has a new ending, and you will play as someone different or something like that, and apparently there's 5 endings to understand the whole main story, and it's true because the third playthrough is fucking magnificent. It's so good, and you're playing as a completely different character now. I love that game so much. But before that, I was playing, or not before, but now I'm back on Injustice 2. I like Injustice 2 as a fighter, but I'm not that compelled by the loot constantly. It's like Destiny and Injustice in a way where you just kind of hop in. You'll do the multiverse, you'll complete some challenges, and you'll get a bunch of loot boxes, and you'll unbox them, and you'll get some cool little gear, and keep buffing your guy up and stuff. It's definitely a lot better, I think, than Mortal Kombat 10, for example. I haven't touched the story yet. I'm saving it for a rainy day because that's something you just can fucking bang out in an evening or something like that because it's 6 to 8 hours long. It's
holy shit. Dude, you went about it completely wrong, FYI.
What?
So you haven't played the story, you just jumped into multiverse and versus?
yeah, because what happens is my friends and I because when we bought Gods Among Us, it's strictly just to duke it out all the time on King of the Hill, and we just keep cycling and doing that for hours at night. So to me, everything else is second nature, if you know what I'm saying. Not that it's bad or not that I look at it lesser,
right?
But it's just that I value different things in the fighter compared to a lot of other people.
I get that. It's just that the story here matters for the multi.
Really?
I don't want to. Yeah, you went about it completely.
I went backwards probably.
Well, no,
online multiverse, and then I'm going story.
Yeah, it's sort of like jumping in the middle, and I'm not saying this will magically make your day better, but what happens is, without spoil, there's a reason why you would go through the story first, because not only gear, but some characters and why they're there. It's pretty insane, and this is coming from somebody who was not a fan of some of their past titles.
Okay.
But unfortunately, you did nothing wrong. They did. I really do believe that they should have made either a concentrated effort. Yeah, or a concentrated effort to not make it matter so much. But I just had a friend who did what you did, and he played the single player. And when he texted me, he was just like, "OMG, I get it now." And I was like, "Yeah, exactly," because it ties in the reason for the loot in a way. It's hard to describe. But give yourself 4 or 5 hours and jump in the single player when you get a chance.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I like the game. It's just not. It's a NetherRealm fighter. I mean, when I thought about it when I bought the game, I was like, I was like, I don't remember the last NetherRealm game I didn't buy. It's been so long.
They're not smooth.
And I still think they haven't made a game as good as Mortal Kombat 9.
Mortal Kombat 9.
It was like the reboot. That one was just superb from top to bottom, and I mean, it's kind of hard to match that. But Injustice 2 it's a good game. But that's what I've been playing, because right now I'm just bouncing between that and Nier, and it's one of these days this year I'll get around to fucking beating Zelda. I don't know when. It's such a commitment, and it's such. I
still haven't finished it either.
Yeah,
don't
it's
worry.
such a good game, and it's like I want to beat it, but I know I got so much time or so much effort to put in to beat that I'm kind of enjoying the more truncated ventures in gaming right now while I can. But that's basically what I've been up to overall.
What I like about the new Zelda is that, Zelda is still an action-adventure title at heart, but it bears a lot of immersive sim qualities, surprisingly enough. So a good example is the way objects interact with one another. So a good example is when you're aiming your arrow at what looks like an explosive barrel near a bunch of goblins. But when you hit the barrel, it just doesn't tuck. What you have to realize in that particular case is that you're dealing with gunpowder, and in order to make it explode, you need to essentially have to light your arrow with fire, and when you shoot the arrow and it hits the barrel, then it explodes. That's a good example. And then I keep watching those, clips of people surfing down mountains on their, and then suddenly jumping and then going to slow motion in order to take down the baddies beneath them. And also using the synergy of paragliding and also just all those elements, and also cutting down trees in order to create bridges to cross, gaps. I think this is a great way of, of making use of the environment in order to achieve your objectives. A bit like, so earlier this year I had the chance to cover Thief at GDC. So I essentially did a poster that talked about its environmental narrative. And I said that the mechanics of using the environment to your advantage to navigate the poor and rich quarters of the city baked into the player the themes of power being something that has to be feared, because in the rich quarters are much harder to go through than the poor ones, because the surface material is harder, so they create more noise, and you can't turn off the light because these are lamps, not torches, and so you can't use your water arrow, and the corridors are much narrower, so you have to improvise when guards are coming your way. And at the time, it was revolutionary because it was the first game to use light and sound as gameplay mechanics. So you could potentially be standing in front of the guard, but as long as you're not making any noise or in the shadows, you're A-okay. I could go on and on about Thief, but
we got too much news to talk about.
I know, but Zelda does a good job of embodying a lot of those immersive sim qualities, even though it's not quite an immersive sim. You don't have much of an impact on the narrative. The gameplay style, it's not quite as broad as the likes of System Shock 2 or Dishonored. But what's there is, I think Nintendo's on an interesting path, and I would like to see it, go further down that particular route in subsequent installments, even if they also express interest in going back to the classic formula of, linear paths and dungeons, should it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I like what they're doing with Zelda too. I mean, obviously the only complaint I have, which is also kind of like I don't have as big of an issue, but it seems like everyone else does, it's the breakable weapons constantly.
Oh, yeah.
Always and forever. Just blowing up on you. Ooh, what do we get into next on this list? Life is Strange 2, anybody?
I'll take that.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll
Take
take
that.
that.
Go on.
I've never enjoyed being a 17-year-old girl as much as Life is Strange. I'm so stoked, man. I remember the shocked look on Maddie's face when I told him one of my favorite games of all time was Sims, and this is probably the second time that I shock people whenever they see me and I'm talking about Call of Duty, and then suddenly I'm like, Life is Strange is awesome. But I'm stoked, man. I cannot wait to see how they sort of. Well, first of all, I want to see if they use Max and Chloe and how they go about the second season, like if they use a canon ending or something. But I cannot wait, man. And from what I understand about Don't Nod and just the way they work on things, there's a good chance that some of the problems that we saw in the first one have been fixed on a purely technical level as well. And I cannot wait. I'm so into it.
Yeah, some people when they were responding to the announcement, some people were like, "Oh, I'm excited. I love the game." But everyone was saying, I saw that one of their biggest complaints with the game was the writing. And I've always wondered with Life is Strange, they were like, "Oh, so corny. It was adults trying to be kids." I thought I don't even want to say the game's charm. I thought that was their goal, was when Chloe was saying hella and they kind of sounded a little cheesy. I thought that was the intention, to capture that era. I thought that's what they were going for. I was a little confused by some of those complaints. Do you think they're going to try to amend those in the sequel, or do you think they're going to be like, "Yo, let's use hella again," and all that type of stuff? I started saying hella since I played that game. I still say it all the time. It's complete. I thought it was a good thing when they said hella. I'm like, "Fuck yeah, that's awesome." I will
say this, and then everybody else can pipe in. Hella, coming from Oregon, where I live, hella is actually still said by the kids. So, because like I said, one of my side jobs, I'm around them a lot, and that's actually said all the time. So it was weird when I feel like Maddie did. When people were talking about the writing, I remember going like, wait, what? Because that sounds exactly like it. I could literally talk to somebody and then come and turn on the game and go, it sounds like they talked to these kids. And what's funny is they did to get some of this stuff. That's the thing. If you went to Boston and said certain things, right? From an Oregonian, they'd be like, "Oregon? What you talking about?" It'd be. I mean, they use different slang, breaky, for Australians, and everybody used different slang. I think they'll probably stick most likely with it.
In Australia.
Oh, dude,
kangaroo
breaky.
school.
You guys love the accent, so you'd fucking adore that game. I guarantee it.
Oh.
Imagine that shit.
So with regards to Life is Strange and the writing, writing dialogue that can actually be said by a teenager in real life is ridiculously hard, because there's a particular slang that is attributed to that demographic that you have to nail in terms of its authenticity and frequency. And there's also the fact that here's the other thing that that interested me about Life is Strange, and that had me compare it to the likes of Night in the Woods and Oxenfree. Oxenfree and Night in the Woods, the dialogue in those games feels more naturalistic. So here's what I'm doing. I'm saying things like, yeah,
right.
I'm stuttering. People don't talk perfectly. So whenever you hear, a video game character speak, their lines are usually polished, all the way through.
Sure.
And save for the occasional or interruption, they always deliver their lines immaculately. But Oxenfree, there are frequent breaks in the character's dialogue when they're trying to think about what you say next. And you can even interrupt them by essentially pressing the buttons that correspond to the different responses that you can deliver at any time or not at all. So the reason I'm pointing this out is because in order to so essentially, cultural issues and also themes of generational gaps between millennials and also what came before them, they are arising. And I think that by capturing capturing how they behave and also how they act, how they think. Among other issues, I think nailing the dialogue is crucial, because if you just use a generalized version of their dialect, you're selling the narrative short, and it's going to prevent your audience from relating with the characters that you wrote and crafted for the context that you similarly honed.
It's also people of that age are, I guess you could say, they're beasts of trends. So you have to nail down what sticks and what might not carry through time. If you know what I'm saying, you want your game to age as best as possible. And if you take just a little trend and throw it into your game, and it might not work a year down the line, even, or a couple months down the line, it might just wear out. So it's like you gotta, I think, also think of that if you're targeting that demographic for a main character in a story.
Yes, it reminds me a bit of that's how I thought about that's how I felt about Strafe, which was recently released, and as much as I admire the developer's attention for capturing that mid to late 90s aura of first-person shooters and Doom clones, I think that they were trying a bit too hard, and when you add in the roguelike elements, which weren't even in the likes of Quake, Duke Nukem, and Doom, for that matter. They weren't. The fact is, what made those games so good in the first place was that they felt so handcrafted and fine-tuned. There was a real, hierarchy and also ecosystem between the different enemies that you faced. Cacodemons, Barons of Hell, imps, soldiers, etc., etc. Like there was a real, and you can even see it in New Doom in how they interact with one another. I thought that was lacking in Strafe. I mean, most of the time you're facing enemies that look like that character from the original Nier, with the mask. It's
real quick. Let's get. I just wanted to hear Lone talk a little bit about Life is Strange before we jump into Strafe.
Oh, I apologize.
That's all right. I just okay, because I heard you laughing and I couldn't tell if you had never played it or if you had actually enjoyed it or if you were going to tease Matt and I for liking it. But you haven't even tested it.
Better not be the latter, or else I'll find you.
I was just laughing a little bit at the whole Hella thing. No, I've never played Life is Strange, to be honest. So
I have a question. Then Oxenfree, as Mitchell brought up, Oxenfree's like game of the year last year for me. Obviously, it sounds like a couple other people like it. Are you into those kind of games, Lone? Do you play those?
No, really.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you're just a heathen.
I'm pretty much just a heathen, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
I'm just joking.
Uncultured.
You uncultured swine. I don't know, like those kinds of games. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say too much because I can't really speak to them. But yeah, never played Oxenfree. Never played.
How about this? You have a reason you don't play them, or you don't get around to them. Is it because? I mean, you like. Here's the thing. Yeah, you like narratives. What's going on, man?
Exactly. Yeah, that's Matty's got my puzzlement in his face. That's what because I do know he likes narrative. So I was wondering what he thought of that particular
narrative. Man? The fuck's going on?
Okay, let's explain it like this. I'm probably what you would consider kind of a video game casual. I know that has a bit of a stigma to it, but
no,
when I only have a certain amount of time to play games, I just want to play the big AAA blockbuster games, really, and then I'll play a few smaller niche PC games here and there.
Playing an indie now, isn't
I know. I am.
Two kind of one.
That's the exact point that I'm saying. You know what I mean? And like recently, I just played Soma 2, which was a fucking fan. Like, if Soma had come out this year, I'd say it was one of my games of the years. Even though that's not really like here and there, I am bucking the trend. But I can only do so much when I still want to play the bigger games.
Yeah.
And I just never got around to playing Life is Strange or Oxenfree. And people are probably yelling at me and saying, "Lone, you're a fucking heathen.
Honestly, though, last year you didn't play that much. This year, though, you've played a pretty fucking good amount. Like, I'm not gonna lie, dude. I'm pretty surprised, especially with all you do. Like, you've been playing a lot more.
I can go into a lot of details to why that's the case, but pretty much last year with YouTube videos, I was always trying to do videos on the weekend. Now I'm just streaming on the weekend. I just don't give a shit. So I've actually played more games this year so far than I've played last year at all.
Yeah. I have the same problem, except that instead of AAA titles, I'm slightly shifting towards indie titles. Here's why. Indie titles are usually shorter, and I can complete them, and I can complete them. I can complete more of them in the same period of time as I would with AAA titles. And the trouble is, as someone who has recently graduated from college and is, thinking of, breaking into the industry as a professional game developer, I have to start thinking more as a game designer, and this means that I have to start creating instead of just consuming, and just also trying to think outside the box, look at other mediums like literature, film, etc., etc., looking for ideas and also inspirations for themes and mechanics that one can incorporate in future endeavors. So because of this, I don't have as much time as I used to playing video games. I don't ever think that I don't think that I'll be ever able to replicate my Fallout 3 playthrough on PlayStation 3. Yeah.
Oh, no.
I
How'd you do it?
Why? Because I had a PS3 only at the time. My PC was. I didn't have an Xbox as well, so.
Okay.
I know. But I spent more than 300 hours in my first playthrough, and I loved it so much that I bought the game again on a PC and 360. So I don't think I'll get those days again, because as we grow older, our time becomes more finite. So you have to think more efficiently and also spend more selectively, because, games are expensive. And you have to.
It's interesting though, because like the fact that you mentioned that games are more expensive. When you get a job, you find that you like beforehand you're like, I have all this time but no money for games, and now it's like I have money but no time for games. It completely switches, and it's like with any other hobby. Once you get into your older years and you have a job, you're working full time, you find less and less time to play games. Like, I'd love nothing more than to be able to play as many games as I can, because if I had all the time in the world, I would play some of these indie titles. Again, like, I would say confidently that Soma is probably in my top 10 of games. Like, fucking amazing game. What's it called? Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. Fantastic game. You know what I mean? Like,
crap. Man, Lone and I should never be in the same room at the same time. Those are two of the most piss-poor games.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, in my opinion, by the way. In my opinion, not in real. Everybody else likes them. So, but it's funny. It's funny he mentions both of those, because those happen to be two that everybody else likes. We've talked about this before on the podcast. Like, what game do you like that other people don't? And Soma was one of the most disenchanting titles I've played in so long.
Serious?
Yeah, and what's weird is I compared it, I believe even in the review, to Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, and I was like, I know.
But those are like two kind of cult.
I know.
Favorite games.
Well, so will Prey. Prey will be, and Matty doesn't like Prey. Or doesn't. It's not that he doesn't like it, but you get my drift. We all have that one title, right? That like. Right. That doesn't match up with everybody else's thoughts on.
Because Prey's a Bethesda game, so I'll never fucking hear the end about how I don't like that one.
It's going to be cool to talk. We should do a podcast just about like picking 2 or 3 games that we just status quo really thinks a certain thing of, and we don't, and why it's possible it doesn't hit you in the way it hit everybody else.
Sorry. In my case, that one game that people love, but I personally dislike is Dead Rising. I did not enjoy the first one at all. I thought it was too restrictive. I know what the intention was, repeated playthroughs in order to get better, but that simply does not work in a game of this scope and also this intensity. If it were, more arcadey, like shorter play sessions, that may have worked. But when you're talking about a game that is meant to be, large in scale, and that encourages the same kind of resource management and combat that you would find in other survival horror games, that simply does not make sense. And I was actually one of the few people who really enjoyed Dead Rising 3. I know that was a divisive title, but I thought that managed to make the experience more palatable for me. Yeah. I know that other people are not gonna don't like Dead Rising 3 as much as past Dead Rising titles. Again, what I'm saying is not gospel. It's just my personal experience with the first, and to a certain degree the second Dead Rising, just wasn't pleasant. So that's just me.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. I mean, I would agree in many ways, actually. So, yeah. Oh, Matty, are you going to take a picture of us?
No. I my camera was done charging. I didn't want the thing to beep, so I was like, let me just fucking get this thing in smooth as possible. But I can't get the goddamn. I put it in the wrong way. Fuck. Anyway, yeah. As for Life is Strange 2, we got a little off track there. Looking forward to that one. How about
Don't we always?
We bounce over to Mitchell. Your job, man.
Of course.
Yeah. Let's
Insider.
talk about that. Let's get the inside juicy details.
Well, I'll try to share, the things that are, appropriate, and not try to break any rules.
Damn it.
So
Damn it.
It's all right.
I think the first question, though, that people would want to know is, how do you get into it? Like, what was the process?
2 words: stand out. So a lot of people say that, when I hear game developers telling people, how to break into the industry, they say, start making games early. Everyone says that. And I disagree with that, because starting games early is not enough. I mean, here's the thing. We live in a world that's becoming more and more saturated with, people who want to break into entertainment industries.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, even if you start early, if you just make the same type of games that follow a particular trend, or that they cater to a particular audience because that other game did it so well, it's going to be harder for you to stand out. Unless you do an exceptional job at it, which, let's be honest, you're never going to compare to the likes of, Zelda, Call of Duty, etc., in terms of design and production values, because you don't have the money for it. So you have to find a way to stand out within your own limits. So this whole writing shtick that I'm honing, that I've been honing since 2015, it all began while I was shopping for hot sauce, ironically enough.
All right.
And I had this idea.
As all stories start.
Yeah. As all stories. Every love story.
I had this idea of, what if I wrote an article about one of my most niche and strangest obsessions since middle school. And that obsession was combining anime with first-person shooters. I wrote an article that expounded the reasons for having anime first-person shooters made more frequently. And I just wrote it for, just to pass the time. And a few days later, the unthinkable happened. It got featured on the front page of Kotaku. And at that moment, the comments started flooding in. And instead of seeing many people ridicule my idea, I saw people who got into a productive debate full of, praise, constructive criticism. It was civilized, and people began sharing their own thoughts, and, they said Oni or Shogo or all of those other games.
Shogo.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That was.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Mobile Armor Division.
Oh, I'm going to get to that.
You're my personal hero, sir.
Oh, hold on. So the article was a huge success, and that compelled me to write more design posts that I publish regularly on Gamasutra. And then at the end of 2015, my writing efforts would be put to the test in the form of an academic paper on Japanese influences in Western first-person shooters. And the games that I used as case studies for that paper were Fear and Shogo, both of which were made by Monolith.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I'm still incredibly proud of that paper because it got the attention of Monolith Productions, which led to them inviting me over to their office, with, again, a great experience. But it also got accepted at 2 game studies conferences. I'm going to be giving 2 speeches later this year about my paper. And
that's fucking awesome.
I know, thank
That's
you.
awesome.
I know. It's just, when you see an opportunity, you have to leverage it. You have to jump at it. So, how many of you watched the Pete Hines podcast with Greg Miller earlier this year?
I watched
I
a good
missed that one.
chunk of it, but
Yes, the Games Cast. So there was that one bit that really hit me about Pete Hines. Pete Hines said that if you're just gonna go to college to get a degree and you're thinking of breaking into the industry, that's not good enough. You need to be a well-rounded person and have all the skills like he did back in college, and also finding opportunities to stand out and have people appreciate your work and see for who you truly are as a creative talent. And when I realized that my writing was having an impact on the gaming community, I began contemplating the idea of, potentially seeking an internship, because in order to gain any job, even an internship, you need to do something in your spare time aside from your academic work. I actually covered all this game development, material in a post that I wrote at the start of 2017. But essentially, what I did is that I networked extensively and presented myself as a writer about and for games. And when I applied to Bethesda, I showed some of my samples of my work, and this eventually led me to an interview and a subsequent job offer. Well, not job offer, but internship offer that would last 2 months until I would fly to Japan in order to complete my senior college project.
Wow.
And that's how
really
I got
hard, man. Holy shit.
I know.
Yeah.
That's how I got in. I got in because I actually went above my academic requirements and did something in my spare time. And I know I had to sacrifice weekends and social time in order to achieve that. But to be honest, if you're not willing to sacrifice your time in order to create something that, shows your talent as a game developer, then someone else will. I know it sounds morbid, but it's truth. You really have to.
It's definitely right, because I've spoken to tons of HR recruiters about this, and when they're doing job applications, they'll get a bunch of CVs in, and all they'll read the front couple of pages, and they'll sort them in to different piles. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, and then I'll break it down there. Literally, if you don't impress straight away, you put it into a no pile, and that's it.
Yeah.
You have to do something extra, something different to be able to stand out from the crowd. And that's easier said than done. And I don't have experience with doing this, specifically in the video games development industry. But just with any job, you need to be able to show that, I use my spare time to do this internship or to do this side project, something else that you've done that adds to your skills and to your repertoire. Otherwise, you can't stand out from the crowd. And why would anyone hire you over anyone else if you're just the same as every other person?
That's true. You have to be unique and distinct, because that's ultimately you have to. It's not about being someone else. You can't afford to be a follower. You have to be a leader of sorts, someone who leverages their unique traits and quirks and have those interests baked and brought to life into your individual endeavors. So it's a bit like what I did recently. I recently wrote a visual novel about farming salmon in the Pacific Northwest, because I grew up eating lots of salmon and other seafood, and I also I also became enamored of food production as a whole. How it's impacting our environment, how it's having an effect on our economy, etc., etc. Those are the kinds of things people are looking for. Works that feel like only you can make. If your game or your other work doesn't feel like something that you alone could create, not someone else, then you have to go the extra mile, because when you're creating something that speaks to your interests, passion arises. And when passion arises, productivity goes up. Yes, you also need the work ethic and the willpower to work long hours consistently, and also taking care of your body and mind in order to do this over and over again, day to day. But if you don't have that personal attachment to your game or work, it's going to show in the final product. So this is why you always need to have something that speaks to you in some degree, in order to create something that will make heads turn. So
makes sense, though. Not to cut you off, but I think of it this way: like when you're going to give a presentation to the class, sometimes the teacher will pick the topic for you, and you'll have to present about something you could really not give a fuck about. And then there are times where you have that, like you said, that extra motivation, that extra productivity when you're talking about something you actually are interested in. A good example I remember when I was in college was I had to do a research project on anything to do with water, because the class is water resources. And I remember I was like, dude, I don't care about water. I was like, I gotta find something interesting. And I remember, you guys are gonna laugh, I fucking did a research project on the Janicki omniprocessor, which is this device that Bill Gates created, and it turns shit into water, drinking water, in fact.
That's great.
It's actually amazing. And so it was like the biggest difference maker there, because I was actually interested in it. I thought it was so fascinating, because that's like something you read out of a fairy tale, not to get off track, and then it actually happens. And so yeah, I was
that's
just
something
saying
that changes people's lives in underdeveloped countries. Like that kind of shit saves lives.
Exactly. It was just really interesting, and I just, not to get off track or take it off of you, Mitchell, but I was just thinking, like, you're so right with the whole, if you're really into it, it'll show. It'll make a difference.
And now I guess the next question is, tell us about your the actual internship or the actual things that you worked on. Obviously, don't break NDA or anything, but how did it all go? Like, what do you do? What is QA testing? Like, I think we were joking about this before the podcast, when they think of QA testing, it's just like, oh, I play games and I'll do stupid stuff here and there to find glitches, and I'll report on it. No. So tell us about, like, what's actually QA testing? What do you do?
Of course. So I'll admit that the first couple of weeks have been were daunting, because I was never in a game studio, let alone a professional environment. So I had to essentially, learn the ropes quickly in order to ensure that I wouldn't let the others down, or fall behind to the point where I'm essentially dragging the others down. So the process of QA goes something like this. Yes, you have to play a game, and you have to break it to look for bugs or unintentional technical issues that may have an impact on the player's experience. And yes, you need to report those. That's pretty common knowledge. It's not something that's unique to one particular company. Everyone has to do it. What people don't understand about QA testing is that it's an iterative and collaborative process. When you're testing a game, you're testing a game with other people. It's not just, you do this and you do that. You do this particular task and I'll just do this and that. It's not separate, because when you take into account the systems that interact with one another, especially in games like immersive sims that are wholly systemic in nature and anything can happen. I mean, that's why you don't see many immersive sims, because they're so hard to make. You have to make sure that, okay, does this react accordingly? Does this function the way it's supposed to? That's pretty standard fare. But when you have this implication stretch across various disciplines and people, it has this knock-on effect, and you have to coordinate you have to coordinate, remotely or across the office to ensure that what you are reporting is not something that is meant to happen normally, or something that has already been reported, because the fact that game development is such a fast-paced endeavor, and the fact that you can't really afford to slow down the team by submitting reports that are redundant or not detailed enough.
Mm-hmm.
You can't afford to do that. So essentially, in any discipline, you have to take notes. You have to remind yourself of all the decisions and all the oddities that you detected while you are doing something. So this can be like, you're designing a particular level, so you see this particular quirk in the level structure, how it's going to impact the player, how it's going to impact the NPCs. You write that down and you report it to your peers or to your superiors. It happens across all disciplines. But you said QA, so it also happens in a QA context. You have to be you can't afford to just sit in a corner and just report all the bugs that you find. It's important, however, to have a great eye for oddities in the code and also in the game environment. When people tell that you're awesome at detecting. Oh, are you all right?
Yeah, that hurt.
Oh, sorry. When people tell you that you're awesome at detecting bugs or viewing things that are abnormal, that's a good sign. That's a first step you need to take in order to be a good QA tester. But it's more than just mere detecting. Once you detect something, you have to ask yourself, has this already been looked at? Or is this something that just happened? Or something that I discovered? And then you share your experience. You share your experience with the others. You share your reservations. Again, something that happens in other disciplines. And then you determine whether or not it's worth talking about. Because if it's not worth talking about, then you can't really afford to, focus on that too heavily, because there are other matters to attend to in, game development, which, again, I said is fast-paced. But, when a lot of people say developers are lazy, they left this bug intentionally. Oh, they didn't. How can they miss that? It's not that simple.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as seeing something and then submitting it instantly, because
so many circumstances.
Because indeed, and then you have patches that may fix or break things.
Might cause other problems. No.
Yes. Oh my goodness. If you think that QA testing is just about playing the game for long hours and looking for oddities and just reporting them, that's it. That doesn't cut it. It's much more iterative and collaborative than that. And it reminds me a bit of what again Pete Hines said in the Gamescast when he said that 95% of people don't know what a beta is. I wish you could add this and that. Only betas are feature complete, so you can only refine what you already have. And he talked about, a good way to put yourself in front of developers is becoming a tester of sorts, submitting reports that are, well detailed and, contain steps to how to reproduce the bug. That's what you need to have as a game developer, not just a tester. You need to have a knack for detail and note-taking. So you were talking about your college experience earlier, and one thing that I'm exceptionally good at, to a fault, is taking a lot of notes. And that means spending more time staring at my notebook than staring at the professor. And I have a good relationship with my professors because I talk to them a lot, but it's suffice it to say that whenever I'm in class, even if those slides are going to be published later on the web portal or whatever they use to publish their material, I just write down my thoughts. Especially, in art classes where you have to write down the steps to how to model a particular character or environment. And that's a skill that I leveraged over time, and that has enabled me to adapt to my internship at Bethesda, because it is a different schedule. It's a 9 to 5 shift. It's not, 1 or 2 hours of class and then rest. 1 or 2 hours of class and then lunch and dinner. It's not like that. You work. You have to work. You have to be willing to work long hours, and take some rest from time to time, because we humans are like engines. We need to refuel ourselves from time to time in order to work in the long term. Because if you just focus on the short term by working nonstop, you're gonna burn out and you're gonna be put out of commission for several days. You can't afford to do that. It's fast paced, yes, and QA testing and all other disciplines have multiple steps and iterations that you have to go through in order to create a polished game. The same thing I did with my visual novel, in terms of I created the alpha for the game. Now I have to create the beta. Now I have to create the polished version. Now I have to include all of the finished art. I have to do all of this along with the artist and the sound designer. And game development, no matter how you look at it, is collaborative. No hubris, no ego, and no remorse with regards to killing your babies.
Can you say what games you've worked on quickly?
At Bethesda?
Or any game? We'll say Bethesda first, and then any other game.
Okay. The only game that I worked on at Bethesda was Skyrim Special Edition, and I think that worked to my advantage personally, because I played that game, so I knew it like the back of my hand.
Yeah.
But I still did. But I did a great job at it, and that internship alone taught me a lot about the game development and also, professional work as a whole. So I think it's important for people who are thinking of breaking into the industry to have those kinds of experiences, along with what I mentioned about doing side projects in your spare time in order to put yourself out there, to stand out, to network. So network especially, because it's one thing to do great work, and it's another to be known for doing great work. So you need to have both of these components if you ever hope to have a wide pool of, developer friends that can help you, not just, break into the industry, but also share knowledge across various disciplines in order to perfect your craft. And that's in addition to consuming media. Whenever I have an idea in mind, I usually, as I said with note-taking, I write it down all the time. Even while I'm on the move, I make use of my notes app in order to write down ideas for projects or articles that I want to write.
Most helpful app ever. Just jotting down ideas as I go along. It'll be 4 a.m. I'll just roll out of bed and be like, I got an idea. Write it down.
186 notes. No regrets.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah.
So I hope that kind of answers your
no, it does.
QA question, because I understand that I can be a bit nebulous when talking about my experience, but I'm doing this because
it's not enough info out on it.
Because I don't want to go too much into details, because people want to get a general idea. It's good to come with a general idea and then delving into the details, so that the transition from getting into the groove of things and then sinking your teeth into more complex tasks, that transition can be made all the smoother if you first look at it as this one piece, and then you find a way to essentially divvy it up so that you can tackle it one by one.
Yeah.
Same thing with homework assignments, or any task, because if you do everything the night before it's due, that's not going to work. If you look at it and you coordinate your work ethic by essentially chipping away at whatever you're doing one by one across several days or weeks, that's going to make the process that much easier, and it'll leave even more room for polish. Polish is important, because if you think just getting whatever needs to be done is all that matters, well, you got another thing coming, because now you have to clear out all the mess that you made while you were crafting that particular, project you were making. It's a bit like cooking.
Yeah. So my question is Bethesda, well, first off, is Bethesda the only place you've done QA for?
Yes, Bethesda is the only place I have done QA for.
Okay, I was going to say, like, what was it like working with them compared to somewhere else, but are you able to go into any details on, like, any interactions there, just any first-hand experience, anything along those lines? Just 'cause a lot of people are also just curious, like, what's it like in the mysterious Bethesda, because they're so closed and for obvious reasons, but I guess a lot of people would probably like an idea of what it's like just working with them, how they are as people and stuff along those lines, I suppose.
So with regards to, shut in, so that again is because, it's hush hush. But all I can say is great teams recognize great talent. So what I have to say on that particular topic is that if you do exceptional work, people notice, and they'll be more willing to, let you take on bigger tasks. Again, that applies to any team and discipline. It's something that would happen at any game studio or any company. If you do exceptional work, if you over-deliver, people will notice, and you'll eventually work your way through the ranks. Again, I know that I'm being a bit hazy with the details, but it's just that again, I want to give people a general idea of what it's like to work at a company in a particular position. But okay, so what I can say between game development and academic work is that in game development, work and social life are more closely intertwined than academia, where you can work one moment and then socialize the other. When you're working in a professional field, your work can have a big impact on your social endeavors, because those people depend on you as well as the others in order to ensure that one project gets done on time, that they can get the money they need to put food on the table, and also keep supporting themselves, as well as taking on the kinds of endeavors that will take their intellect and skills to the next level. People have to learn constantly, and I hear people say that we don't stop playing because we grow old, but we grow old because we stop playing. That's true, but that's pretty narrow-minded. A better way to phrase it is, we don't stop learning. The moment we stop learning is the moment we start growing old, regardless if you're 20 or 80 years old. Basically, if you work exceptionally well in the professional field, you're going to be making good friends. And as long as you don't sacrifice, as long as you don't sacrifice your health and your image in favor of work, you have to find that fine balance between work and work-life balance. But because they're more closely intertwined, you have to be, people say hardworking all the time, but it's a combination of work ethic, talent, and passion. This trinity of qualities that you need to have as a creative and professional individual, I think, is what differentiates people, the wannabes and also-rans, from those who are willing to stay at a particular company for several years. So I remember when Bethesda did their little video back in 2015, and people said, I stayed at Bethesda for X number of years, like 9 years, or Matt Grandstaff, for instance, he recently celebrated 10 years at Bethesda, and Pete Hines, I think it was, 17, I think Pete Hines later this year, his career will be old enough to vote. So when you have when you have people staying at a company for that long a period of time, that says something about their commitment to their work.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Oh, thank you.
I was going to say really quickly before we move on, did you know Matt Grandstaff did writing for New Vegas?
No.
No, I have not.
Yeah. Oh, because I did a video the other day where I had to look at who worked on New Vegas, and Matt Grandstaff was on the Obsidian. Well, he was working at Bethesda Softworks, but he did some writing for New Vegas. Yeah, how insane is that?
That is fucking insane. I actually never would have thought either. That's crazy. Oh my god.
Anyways, we can move on.
I'm sorry if it looks like I'm overreacting. Just like he's the guy I talked to most at Bethesda, and I had no fucking idea.
I also met Chris Avalone last year.
Amazing,
I met him. It's cool.
I know he's a swell fellow, and we even got a drink together. And I remember when he asked me about, hey Mitchell, why did you decide to write about Thief for your narrative project? And then we started to have this long conversation about immersive sims and how Shogo nearly spelled the doom of Black Owl Studios. Because while they were working on Fallout 2, the studio would periodically, like purposefully call in sick just to play Shogo. And so, yes, with regards to, Shogo Mobile Armor Division, don't mention those words to Chris, or else he'll have his feathers ruffled.
Oh no. You guys want to talk about some Destiny 2?
Oh, certainly. I'm feeling a bit parched. Do you mind if I fetch some water?
Go ahead.
All right, thanks. I'll be right back.
All right. Cool.
Did you guys watch the full stream?
Yeah. I gotta be real. What was that? Yeah, I was warming up Big ZD from the night before, and I turned it on. There's like the pre-show. It showed the first batch. It was called the gameplay trailer, but it wasn't gameplay. I watched that. I watched the opening gameplay and then the homecoming mission.
Yeah, the homecoming.
And after that, I was just like, not like I have an excuse for dismissing it fast. I was like, I got other shit to do, and honestly, this, and I know it's a sequel. I don't want to piss anyone off. I've realized Destiny fans get really fucking pissed easily. Like, I didn't say this game looks bad. I was like, this just looks like Destiny 1.5. And people were like, no shit, it's a sequel. I'm like, no, I mean that in the way of they're talking about dungeons, open world, all these different things that would make Destiny 2 very appealing for someone such as myself. But what they showed was a more cinematic, not complaining, but I'm saying more cinematic version of Destiny 1. There was rain, there was explosions, fucking enemies flying in on craters or whatever. I mean, I don't know the lore, so it might be something more specifically called. But I just, at the end of the day, Destiny 2 is revealed. Didn't do it for me. Intrigued to see this open world, intrigued to see the quests, the dungeons, all that stuff. But yeah, as for Destiny 2, right now, it's like, my exact words were, if Destiny 2's gameplay reveal is good, I will buy the Destiny collection. I said it when it was me alone and never that kid. I said I'd buy it if the reveal looked good. Not sold on it, so still holding off.
So that means you watched it all, Karak, didn't you?
I did.
How was it?
I mean, I'm probably a little bit higher on Destiny than maybe Matty is. Not much, but to me, I think the honest truth is that they don't show well. The honest truth, they don't. They, for some reason, I don't know who's behind the scenes on how they cut their stuff and who's on the, but it's almost like, I've done this for reviews. Maddie and I've talked about this before, where sometimes you want to indicate a bug in a review, but it's in a level after the embargo. Like the embargo says you can't show anything after level 5, and it's a level 6 bug, so you have to talk about it, but your footage doesn't reflect it.
Yeah.
What happened through a lot of that was discussion, and this is pretty much what Maddie's pointing out, is discussion around particular elements of the game that in many times was not actually shown on the screen or was not reflected well. And so you get this detachment. And so I heard a lot of people saying, and I don't believe this, by the way, I heard a lot of people saying, oh, it's like DLC or it's 1.5. Those are ways to describe what I think a lot of people felt was a detached moment to where you didn't say this is a sequel. And that's what happened. Is I didn't hear a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, this is Destiny 2." They didn't show those moments to make you think that.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. So when I remember watching the original footage for Destiny 1, and that looked intriguing.
Good point. Initially, I didn't even think back to my first reaction to that game.
and that look intriguing and interesting. When I look at Destiny 2, the first thing that came to mind was that it felt more like so yes, I don't think the reveal did Destiny 2 much justice, but it looked more like an iteration. Like, yes, I know sequels are, in a way, iterations on the original formula while adding flourishes that make it their own thing that are in ways that are meant to be much better than the original.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get as much of a vibe in terms of massive improvements to the formula by watching Destiny 2 as I would with other sequels that made huge improvements on the original. I mean, some of the best sequels that I've ever played, Killzone 2, Saints Row 2, Metro Last Light.
Wow, yeah, great one.
And also Darksiders 2, which I thought blew the original out of the water, in my opinion.
I think when we're talking blow originals out of the water, Watch Dogs 2.
Hell yes, that as well.
Assassin's Creed 2.
Those are the games. Oh, Assassin's Creed 2, another swell example. Yes, I didn't get that vibe by watching Destiny 2. I know that the opening was, more bombastic and flashier than, what we saw with the original. But again, I think that personally I need to see more footage of it, and I need to learn more about the additions and refinements in order to convince myself that it is indeed sequel, like that it feels like a sequel. Like, it is technically a sequel, but it needs to feel like one as well. So I believe that most of the improvements Bungie did to Destiny 2 are more internal than external, in that external meaning, graphics and the reactions and the animations that you see from shots fired, and also the moment gameplay, but not the subtleties such as how do weapons feel and have these statistics or abilities or mechanics being changed in a way to make the gameplay flow more efficient and potent.
I have to say, though, because I guess a lot of people that, like myself, played the original Destiny, stopped after a while, but then you hear constantly from current Destiny players how things improved beyond that. Mm-hmm. And I guess the main complaint, the main gripe from original Destiny players that fell off was that there was a lack of content. It seems like with this Destiny, they are adding more content, even though it very much feels and looks the same, which is exactly what people wanted. People were like, it's a solid shooter at heart. It's fun to play, but there was just no meaning for me to keep playing the game after that short little story and just just go through and collect weapons and all that kind of stuff, that kind of grindy aspect of the game. But it seems like there is a bit more substance to it now, and that's exactly what people kind of wanted, right? I don't know.
It is, but here's the problem. You're right. The problem is, though, is they say that, but what they showed looked like a mod to some people. It looked like it just looked far too close to the original. And so what happens is it's hard to differentiate. Did I just miss this level and it's actually in 1, but they're revisiting it? Or is this a whole new place? And when I was talking to fans, they were like, I'm stoked for what they said, not for what they showed. Almost everybody I've talked to has said the same thing.
Okay.
I'm really stoked to play Destiny 2. And for example, myself, I feel the same way. I'm stoked to play a more open environment. There's particular things I don't like about 1. Yeah. But what they showed and their answers for some of the questions, I think, combined together to create this Voltron of shit. Because I'm going to tell you right now, when fucking Luke, right? Smith?
Yeah.
Isn't that his name? When he's up there talking and they ask him a question, and some of the answers he gave later in interviews were terrible. They were next level terrible. They were him and Han and and you're just like, dude, this is your event. Like,
yeah, it's
we're
like
asking
lack
you
of preparation.
Yeah, when they asked him the dedicated server question, and it was like, well, I don't want to say that it's not money, but it's really money, because it's not money when it's really money. And you're just like, what the fuck he's lost his mind. He's having a stroke right now. And that happened multiple times when he talked, and I have no problem with that guy at all. I have a problem with whatever they prepare, how they prepped, in a way, I told one other YouTuber yesterday, I actually feel like there's a chance that some stuff was not shown that they wanted to show. And that what we got was, once again, we've all talked about this, an E3 kind of situation where you're like, we want to show this. Oh, hey, let's cut this. And you have that moment in the E3 where everybody's waiting and they realize that the trailer they wanted to show, they can't because they cut it. And you're like, so anyway, and that's what some of Destiny 2's reveal felt like.
I think the biggest issue to me that stuck out with Destiny 2 is, like Mitchell said, you're going to see a lot of the familiarity carry over because it's supposed to be a sequel, so you're supposed to recognize it but add those new elements. But in a way, I get what people were saying. I even said, like, it kind of looks like Destiny 1.5 in the way where you'd see the same exact animations, the same exact UI. And these are nitpicks, fully admitting that. I'm just saying, though, it was right off the bat, I knew it was Destiny, but I'm thinking Destiny 1. Usually when you move on to that next entry, you get that new feeling. It's like a fresh coat of paint, even though it's like, it's familiar, but yet brand new. I don't know how to explain it properly.
This was like Call of Destiny in a way. Like, instead of Call of Duty, it was like a Call of Destiny, announcement where you were like, oh, okay, it's the next game in the Call of Duty series, but it's still Call of Duty, and this is the next game in the Destiny series.
Yeah, but like, even Call of Duty
but
has
what
like
they
little
showed,
different details around the edges and the corners of the screen, maybe to simulate the mask you're wearing or something along those lines. And that's the thing, is like, I was expecting just those subtle changes. It's like when you saw the exact copy and paste, I wondered if it was telling of the grander picture. That was the immediate impression I got, where, yeah, it's a very minor thing. If the game's fantastic, the open world's good, that's what I'm more concerned about. I'm just saying that first feeling I got when I watched it, I was like, it was a little jarring. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I was sitting there eating my lunch. I'm like, this is Destiny 1 expansion, or is this 2? It looked fun. Like, the idea of playing through that mission with a friend or something sounds fun, but my biggest thing is exactly what Karak said. What they said, the open world dungeons, questing, NPC interaction, excellent. That sounds cool, but it sounds cool. I didn't see really anything that was like, whoa. Especially because, I knew this would be a big topic, and I was like, okay, like, I'm really not feeling this, and I got other shit to do. I'm gonna go do something else. Like, it was that underwhelming for me as someone who was really hoping to be picking up maybe Destiny Collection this weekend and playing that through with some friends.
That's just I don't know, man. And maybe it is one of those things where it's just kind of difficult naturally anyways. And like, fundamentally, it was difficult for them to convey what they were trying to say, even though it could have been done, obviously. But at least from the standpoint of what I'm hearing, this game has much more content than Destiny 1. And again, going back to the fact that I think a lot of people that I talked to who played Destiny 1, no one ever complained really about the shooting or the gunplay or what it looked or felt like. So why change that much if it's not broken? I know it doesn't necessarily feel like, a true sequel, if you will, but Destiny 1 is a pretty recent game. And
you know what? Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all right. I'll just quickly finish then. Like, it even though it doesn't like look drastically different, I think that might not be a bad thing. I mean, if the game still looks, feels, and plays just as great as the first one, but there's just much more content there. There seems to be a bigger campaign, which is more cinematic and all that stuff. Then, I'm pretty happy with that.
For the inevitable Destiny 2 is what Destiny 1 should have been headline. I can hear it now.
No, I get that, but. And that's the thing. Like, Bungie went out on their own. Well, not really on their own. They're with Acti, but they've done this new game, branched away with what they've done previously with Halo, and it's usually the case. Like, I could name so many first-time games in a franchise that are shit, and then look at what the sequel did. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the sequel always looked vastly different to what the original did. That doesn't necessarily mean that, this looks like a true sequel, visually, graphics-wise, the UI, all that kind of stuff. But it's just adding more content, making the game better fundamentally. Yeah, you might get the whole, well, this is what the original game should have been, but that's not how development works. So long as they improve and listen to fan feedback, even though it looks and feels like the first game, that's fine, because I don't think that's what people were complaining about in the first place.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. In the scheme of things, they're nitpicks. I mean, the most exciting part for me was right in the beginning of the actual gameplay when you see all of them unleash their fucking powers and take out swords and stuff. I was like, that looks fun, So that type of stuff I'm stoked for. And if you can pull that off in an open world and it's like an actual, I'm thinking like seamless open worlds. I'm not talking this stuff we've been seeing lately, which is like tons of hubs, which I'm not against. I'm just saying,
bunch of load screens. Yeah.
Reminds of Stalker.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to see a true open world, and I gotta be honest, no company I can think of, like Bethesda Game Studios does my favorite video game dungeons. Just the way they craft them, how they're short, little experiences in their own. When I hear dungeons in another open world, I'm like, okay, like let's go. Like I want a game that matches what I view as like the top of quality when it comes to dungeons.
Yeah.
It's
right.
Just that just rewarding exploration. They do it so well, and I want another game to do it.
I remember when I played Oblivion all those years ago. So I first discovered Bethesda back in '08 following a nasty car crash that I got caught in. And one of the games that my relatives bought for me to console myself was the Game of the Year edition for Oblivion on PS3.
That's
when
cool.
I played that game, all I thought was, this was an RPG, and I heard a lot of good things about it, and I said to myself, I played RPGs in my spare time, so I think this is gonna be another great time waster. And boy, was I wrong, because it proved to be much more than that.
Yeah.
Oblivion completely revamped my perspective on RPGs. From the way the open world reacted to my actions, both from an environmental and NPC perspective, to the way the game content was spread out, like in dungeons and also quests, and then you have the guilds such as and also like the Dark Brotherhood quest line, which is some of the best some of the best pieces of content I've ever seen in an RPG. I think the writers did a stellar job with that particular story arc. And just the idea of ignoring the main quest, just to go about your business. That's something that before I played Oblivion, I had never done. And the dungeons in Oblivion were tense in a way because of Jeremy Soul's incredible soundtrack, which I thought Skyrim was also pretty good, but Oblivion, like, if you're familiar with Soul's work for that game, you'll know just how creepy things can get. I know. Like I can just look at my iTunes list right now. So if I go down here, Jeremy Soul, yes, right here, like tracks such as Unmarked Stones, Ancient Sorrow, and then Tension, and then Deep Waters. Like, those tracks are the kind of tunes that really get me going. They really instill that sense of environmental dread and tension that I seek from every survival horror game that I play. Like, even Thief is gloomier than other games that are meant to be horror in nature. With Oblivion, the environmental storytelling, such as the one that talks about how there was this human that was raised by goblins in one of the dungeons. I thought that was or goblins or trolls, whatever.
Not 100% sure.
That was particularly surprising, and that compelled me to explore all of the dungeons across Cyrodiil, even if the fact that they were all designed by one person started to show with repeated treks through the depths of Tamriel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that was a great. So I agree with you, Maddie. I thought that the way Bethesda designed dungeons was one of the main reasons I became so enamored of their titles, and the reasons why I began purchasing all of the RPGs that they released, and also their third-party offerings. I even purchased I even purchased Rogue Warrior because
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't
I know.
worry. We apologize.
I know.
But you know, this is an interesting topic though, because I don't know why recently I've been going through old games and seeing what I would classify as an open world game, and really it's a concept that people haven't necessarily agreed on. And when Destiny and Bungie said, "Oh yeah, we're going to have an open world game." Well, what does that mean? Like Matty said, are they going to be big hubs that you'd have to have a big load screen before you traveled between them, or is it going to be like an Elder Scrolls or Fallout where it's truly open world, but there are some buildings or there are some cities or towns where you'd have to go through a small load screen? Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to see where Destiny 2 falls on that side of it, because my feeling is, like, could it be like Dying Light? Could it be like Borderlands? I don't know. I would prefer if it was that much more open world style and feel, but like Breath of the Wild was, for instance. And it's funny going back through old Zelda games. I don't know if anyone's played Wind Waker here, but people always say that Wind Waker was an open world game, but it kind of just used the sea as a mask for being open world, and that's where they used they incorporated all the load screens. So, yeah, I'm interested to see what kind of open world Destiny 2 is going to be. Is it going to be a true one, or is it just going to be big and open world in spaces, but still very much hub based? I think it's going to be the latter, to be honest. I don't think it's going to be like Fallout or Elder Scrolls or Breath of the Wild.
Right. I think similarly of Shadow of War, especially given that they released their recent open world trailer. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember the original Mordor having the original Middle Earth having, 2 separate maps that are big, but they're still separated by load screens. I wonder what Monolith will do with, now that they mastered the power of 8th-generation consoles, especially given that Shadow of War is going to be the first game that's going to fully support Project Scorpio. So I look forward to seeing what they'll do with the open world, as well as how they'll expand the Nemesis system. That, I think, is looking particularly intriguing. But I really want also to see how that's going to have an impact on the way the world is structured and also populated.
Mm. Very nice. How about what is obviously going to be the greatest television show of this generation, The Witcher on Netflix? You can hear it now. You can hear it now. Oh, my God. So apparently these are going to be based off the books, which is definitely awesome, because I think that'll fit the narrative structure for a television show compared to what I was having a discussion with the viewer on Twitter, where I was like, The Witcher 3, The Witcher 2, and maybe for some, The Witcher 1, are special games for a reason, because it's things they do in a game that I don't think you can replicate on television. But if they're going to follow the path of the books, I'd be curious to see how this goes. But on the other hand, video game adaptations of any form, shape, and fashion, just they don't, as far as I can recall, they don't really work.
But as you said, this is not necessarily a video game adaptation. It's a book adaptation that happens to be a video game too.
Yeah,
right.
It's like making a show off Metro, for example. Their games based off books.
Exactly right. So. Yeah, and I think. This is the worry, though, because it's based off the books, and let's be honest, most people that have played the Witcher games, even Witcher 3, no one people might know about the books, but no one gives a shit about the books. Like, you tell me...
Oh, no.
No, but seriously, like, you tell me... Not give a shit, that's probably a bad term, but you tell me how many people that have played Witcher 3 have also read the books. And
right, if you had... I think it's the...
Yeah, you say a lot of people, but I'm talking about out of the millions of gamers that have played Witcher 3... How many have read the books? Yeah. And that's the worry. If you make it, and I'm not saying that's going to make it bad. I'm just saying it's something to point out. If you dedicate this Netflix series to the books, and people playing the games are expecting a certain thing, and they go into there thinking, well, what is this? This isn't Witcher. Well, yeah, it is, but it's the book Witcher, which is probably different to the video game.
Right. Speaking of, it's interesting because a few weeks ago, I read an article featuring the author of the Witcher books, and
I read that too.
And I read it too. He feels quite ambivalent towards the idea of video games as a narrative medium, and I remember him, regretting a bit how he didn't, benefit from the profit that CD Projekt Red made with the Witcher titles.
Apparently, the deal he did, he's not getting any royalties. He's not getting any bonuses or anything, but he's probably going to be doing that for the Netflix series. I couldn't imagine that he created another deal or signed another deal where he would also not get royalties for something. I'm pretty sure in this case he's going to be, because he seemed a bit salty about that when I read those articles.
Think of it. Yeah, I mean, think of it. You help create it and then you don't get fucking squat from it. Like,
but he said apparently that was his fault. If I'm remembering that article correctly, he organized a bad deal. I don't know.
Dmitry Glukhovsky, the author of the Metro series, however, he thinks differently. He thinks that video games can be an effective tool for telling engrossing stories, and this is why he. I'm not sure if it was. I think it was him who approached 4A Games in terms of having Metro 2033 adapted into a video game. And I remember when that game was initially announced for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and PC initially. And then when it got re-revealed in 2009 for 360 and PC, that was the game that convinced me to essentially upgrade my PC to a slightly beefier setup. Same way with Crysis back in 2007. And I was quite impressed with what they did in terms of how they managed to weave a narrative through, again, not through the environment, but also through the character himself, Artyom. So what I like about Metro is that the way the UI is set up, you have your journal, you have your watch, your ammo count, everything on the body of your player avatar. And that tells you a lot about the way he is geared and also how he has to manage his resources, in this post-apocalyptic environment. That's great. I think that's a good way of leveraging the subject matter and material from a book or another medium into a video game, because video games have the benefit of being not just audiovisual in nature, but also interactive. So it doesn't feel vicarious. It also feels tangible and yes, tangible. I don't want to say visceral because otherwise it'll sound like Call of Duty's World War II reveal where they say visceral several times. So I shall spare myself the ridicule. It feels palpable. So you have that, and I think Glukhovsky has a point. But one has to be careful when translating material from a book to a video game, because video games, the pacing of games, is dictated not just by the developer but also by the player. Whereas in a book, it can easily follow the 3-act structure, no problem. This might not work in a game if gameplay and dynamic elements are par for the course. I remember Richard Rouse III, who is currently working on Church in the Darkness. He gave a speech along with one of his fellow developers on why the 3-act structure sucks. So one has to be careful, but I wouldn't go as far as to say as gaming isn't fit for adaptations. I think the author of The Witcher is a bit wrong on that. I do agree, however, that it's not just a matter of literally translating what's in one medium to another. It's a bit like direct translations from Japanese to English, like word to word. But that doesn't work, because then you have to take into account context and dialects. So what might make sense in one culture and dialect may not, resonate in the other. So you have to factor all of these, implications, when you're trying to adapt something to a different medium or culture. And again, this can occur, with regards to the Metro and Witcher, because these are Eastern European productions that with a unique history, design philosophy, methodology, and also lore. They're truly special. I remember reading an IGN article about how games made in the West, our shores, are all about bombast and Michael Bay action, and games that are from the Land of the Rising Sun are so obsessed with anime. Like, these are generalizations, yes. But what they point out about Eastern Europe is that there's this great fascination with books. So Roadside Picnic for Stalker, The Witcher for The Witcher, and Metro for Metro. So you look at these and you think to yourself, so how do I take elements from this book and apply it to my game? Stalker is a bit strange because it's not a direct adaptation of Roadside Picnic, but it does contain a lot of elements from it. For instance, anomalies, littering the landscape, using bolts to detect them, the idea of a zone. Those are all in Stalker, which originated from Roadside Picnic. And it's funny for me to mention Stalker because I also wrote about it. I wrote a review for the computer role-playing game project by Philippe Pepe. I wrote a review of sorts for it, and I expounded those details because I think it's important to take into account the idea of adaptations along with creating narrative for your game. Now, that's another ballpark. It's like, because if you mucked it up, if you were working on a Batman adaptation, suddenly you would end up with him using guns, which wouldn't make sense given that Batman is not the kind of person who kills. So you have to be careful with how you take something from one medium to the other. So I do agree that, probably the issue of not watching the Witcher Netflix series because it's based on the book rather than the games, and how much material can translate from one medium to the other. Again, I know I've been driveling a bit on that particular topic, but those are easy mistakes to make as a talent, and it can be a bit of a missed opportunity for doing justice to the kind of material that you are especially fond about.
Interesting. Yeah, damn, dude. Yeah, you just fucking hit me with the information overload. It's like I gotta process all of it. Just take a fucking moment, breathe. Oh.
What do you think, though, Karak? You've been a bit quiet.
What do I think about what?
Witcher being a Netflix series.
I mean, like, they just announced it, so I don't really have much to add to that until we see, we saw Sword of Truth, too, which was Terry Goodkind's incredibly popular series fail pretty spectacularly after, I think it got its second season. So I think a lot of times people are just trying to jump onto the Game of Thrones bandwagon kind of thing. And yeah, and for me, I'm much more interested in if it's good than if it copies or mimics something. I mean, Game of Thrones is supposed to have, 4? Didn't they announce they had 4 spin-offs planned for Game of Thrones alone? So, no.
And milking it dry.
Milking it dry. Like, literally milking it dry, replacing it with an artificial tit, and then milking the artificial tit dry. So, not much. It's so far out. The authors, I mean, he is pretty much an incredibly massive douchebag. So it's like, we have no clue if he's going to stick around. Like, is he going to cause more issues? I mean, he is. I mean, he is. He's a jackass.
No, I'm laughing. He will. I love it.
Well, he will admit he's a jackass. He's admitted it before. I mean, he admitted it during that discussion with the other author. And the other author was like, yeah, he's sort of an egotistical jackass. He is. He has a place and a right to be. But I'm a little nervous that somebody like that will be like Clive Cussler, who's had enormous success fictionally and incredibly terrible. Even Sahara with Matthew McConaughey did terrible technically. And it's because Clive himself is almost impossible to work with. And so it'll just be interesting to see. But there's so many pots in the fire right now. We don't really know.
Like Charlie Chaplin, being a silent film icon and then having a bit of trouble with talkies, especially when the jazz singer came around the corner and suddenly it signaled the end of the silent comedy. So, yes, those kinds of transitions from either, one endeavor to the other, one medium to the other,
Right.
But how much of an involvement is the writer going to be having in this series, though? I mean, I can't imagine he's going to be having a big part. He's just going to be like, yeah, send me my royalty check every month, and we'll be good to go. Like, and not that's not a knock on him. Like, I think I'd do the same.
Yeah, I'd be like,
I don't know. I mean, like,
and go do something else.
The problem is if he wants a bigger deal, then there is a chance they'll require more. It all depends, and sometimes they're just a resource, right? Like they're just there to answer questions about the world. So that is possible. But again, that's sort of so many things are up in the air. I don't really have an opinion because it's like they announce something some point at some time. It's just like Witcher, not Witcher 3, sorry, or not Witcher 4, but what's the game they're working on? Cyber World. Yeah, Cyberpunk.
Yep, Cyberpunk.
I'm not at all interested in it because it's so far out and they've shown nothing. So it's like right now I'm just sort of sitting back going, could be good, but we've seen great studios release terrible second games. It could be great because we've seen sequels be awesome from companies, but like you said earlier, some sequels are awesome from some companies. Some sequels have sucked. Good studio doesn't mean they're going to magically make a great game. And when it's so far out, it's hard to even talk about it because you're like, I think with the sorry, I forgot it again. Cyberpunk
2077.
Cyberpunk 2077. Thank you. So Cyberpunk 2077. The reason why I don't even follow it is because I think the only thing I've seen on it is its font. I mean, I literally think that's all I know of the game is and what they've said they want to do. But a little bit like Destiny 2, they need to show it. Right, like we need to see it. I need to see what Witcher is going to look like on a TV show. Like, if it's not The Witcher, is it going to be him? If it is him, then I would. If it is Geralt, then or however you pronounce it, then I would assume the writer would be involved. If it's not, then I don't know. Like, have they said that? Have they even gone so far as to say what it's about? Like, is it about another Witcher?
No, it's just about it's going to be about the book series, and I think the VP of Netflix.
I'd be incredibly surprised if he didn't have at least a supervising role.
Me too.
At least.
I don't know, but he's retired though. The writer, as far as I understand it.
And
it's you know, like he might be consulted every now and again, but I remember an interview where he was talking about the Witcher games, and he's like, I'm a retired businessman or something. So I can't imagine, like, he might be consulted here and there about the fine, subtler details of his novel, but very much so. It's a Netflix series. I mean, they're gonna take artistic liberties with this, and I think rightly so. They're the ones that are best fit to make a series, and he's the one that's best fit to make a book or to write books.
Right. Yes, consultant. That's the right word for it. So I stand corrected.
Yeah.
So we got 2 topics left. We'll wrap up 2 of them into one. Because we got to talk about Xbox and we got some Ubisoft stuff. So Phantom Dust is being re-released for free on PC and Xbox One. And on top of that, we got a Scalebound trademark. So let's take a crack at the Scalebound trademark because I think that one alone, you get some pent-up rage.
My God.
So obviously registering a trademark doesn't mean anything. They're just protecting it. It doesn't show an indication that in the future they want to work on another Scalebound game. Probably, yeah. Doesn't mean it's in development now. No, probably not. And I think there was a Windows Central article about this where someone he had some sources, the article author, and he said no, it's not in development. And
Shocker.
This is something
just canceled.
I know. This is something that we've dealt with in Fallout all the time, Matty. Like, you know, just because the Fallout movie trademark has been renewed, it doesn't mean shit. They just want to protect their trademark. That's the intention of it. So just in case in the future they want to use it, they have it protected. Because if they don't use a trademark or they don't keep it registered, then they lose it. And that's the only reason why they're renewing it.
Too, or Psycho Break 2, where it's like, you know, like those type of trademarks I think are giveaways. But I see what you're getting at. Yeah, I think it's silly for people to look into a trademark when the game was just canceled. It's not. We talked about this cancellation extensively. We're like, this game, they clearly thought no matter what amount of money they put in, they were not getting it back, despite all they put in. Where they thought it was a better idea just to can it, and they're not going to can it and then go, fuck.
Let's start development again.
Yeah,
let's throw in another $200 million into the game.
Like, no, they're not gonna do that. That'd be silly. It's like that's a big decision. They don't just do it nilly willy and then reverse it.
Yeah, but I very much see a couple, like 3-4 years, however long down the line it is, they would say, well, you know what? We have this developer that's free. We trust their work. They're a Microsoft studio. Let's give them the game again. And that's important because we've kept up the registration of the trademark. That's what it is.
I'll admit, compared to Sony and Nintendo, Microsoft has been a wee bit shaky with its exclusives. I mean, let's turn the clock back to 2014 when Scalebound got announced at E3. Crackdown also got announced at E3, and we did see exclusives like Halo 5 and Gears of War 4 being released, but Crackdown, I hope it's gonna be released this year because I have and then you have a Scalebound getting canceled all of a sudden after nearly 3 years of it being announced, and this has me a bit worried about the lineup because everybody knows that the hardware doesn't mean much if the software or the incentive to own a particular piece of equipment isn't there. So
I'm telling you right now, they have secrets for their E3 presser. Like they're just remaining hush hush.
All right.
And then time for the E3 presser, it's going to be bam, game, bam, game, bam, game.
That's
and
what's
if I'm wrong,
strange about the Phantom Dust re-release is because they're also doing a remake, like or a reboot, something like that, like a brand new Phantom Dust. But they're also re-releasing the old one, and they just did it for free one week. They're like, yeah, it's coming out tomorrow, guys. Enjoy. And like people freaked out. I've never played Phantom Dust. One of the guys who I followed, he used to work at Rev 3 Games. That's a throwback. Nick Robinson, I think it was. And then yeah, I still follow him, and he was like, Phantom Dust is literally my favorite game ever made. I remember watching like a video I think they made on Rev 3 of like their favorite games of all time, and he talked about Phantom Dust. And I saw it, I was like, that's different. I want to look into that, and I never got around to it. So this re-release is something I'm definitely going to take a crack at some point in time. I think it's only 9 gigabytes on the Xbox One, so you can just download it for those who are curious. But it just shows how Microsoft's really trying to get back in the fight somehow. They're like, here, take a fucking free, awesome game. Apparently, it's awesome at least.
Right.
You mentioned Rev 3 Games. I fucking missed that channel.
I know.
I thought Rev 3
Right.
Games was amazing.
Right. Speaking of obscure Xbox re-releases, I also recently took a crack at Voodoo Vince, which had its remaster released last month.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that game was released back in 2003, and it didn't really make much of a splash back then. It received decent at best reviews, and when I got a chance to play it, I thought it was pretty good. So it's interesting to see Microsoft look at games that initially didn't get a lot of attention when they were initially released, and now they are coming back all spruced up. It also reminds me of another project that I've been following for several years, but similarly to Cyberpunk, I haven't been paying much attention to because of dearth of information. Time Splitters Rewind.
Time Splitters! Holy shit!
Yeah, I know. That was so on my Patreon. That profile pic is actually from one of the multiplayer characters in Future Perfect, the Shoal. So that's how I love that series. It got me into first-person shooters in the first place. Look, it's a mod project. It's a fan-made, and I can understand why they're taking their sweet time with it. It's not like they are full-time or have the budget for it. And let's be honest, Crytek hasn't exactly been a good steward of the Time Splitters license. And in my opinion, the sooner they sell it off to someone else, the better. I heard that Devolver is interested in nabbing the license.
Yes, Devolver's great, man.
Yeah, I know. I hope it happens, but I really hope that such, I like this trend of giving obscure games a new lease on life. because
it might sync with a crowd again. I think Rocket League is what started that. They were like, that was so random and different, and it just, like you said, they just kind of tossed it out there as a PS Plus game, and it became a big hit. And it's like you don't predict that stuff. So I wonder if that's why you'll see, for example, Phantom Dust pop out, and they'll be like, hey, try it, and maybe it'll catch on because it is multiplayer. So there's always a good chance of that.
Oh yes, I remember PS Plus when it was announced back at, I think it was E3 2010. Yes, 2010 was a huge year at E3. I think next to 2015, it's one of the best E3s I've ever watched. I think it was I think at that point it was the real turning point, the mid-generation turning point for the 7th generation. I wonder if this E3, or if that doesn't work out, the other one is going to be just as pivotal, because sorry,
can I add something? I got to get going here. This has gone a little longer.
No problem.
Hang on. I just want to add something. Roll the thing back back. We were talking about Phantom Dust a while ago, and I just wanted to add that the idea of most likely that title being rolled out as a remaster / also free is we're also hearing a lot of developers saying that unfortunately a majority of people are vocal but don't back it up with their money, don't back it up with their time, don't back it up. For example, people say, oh, this game's only 8 hours long, but less than 20% of people finish any game. So what happens is a person can bitch and then pretend they're not going to buy a title, when in reality there's a very good chance they're complete liars. And so and that's true. I mean, I'm not being rude. People do it. Like they'll even admit it on channels. So Microsoft and Sony, I would assume, doing this as well, Nintendo as well, reaching out to gamers with little snippets and seeing what truly catches on. And we talked about this before with what stats are held by PSN and by Xbox and what they can see and what engagement they see. I think that matters. I think that they'll look at like a Phantom Dust and go, okay, these people said they wanted to play the old game. Your person you follow at Rev3, and he did, right? They did play it, so that there is something to be said there. And I think we're going to start seeing that more as people hedge their bets, because everybody I talk to, small or large in development and in publishers, they all say the same thing, that it's not that they want to make worse games. It's not that they want to grift everybody. It's literally that they want the data. We've talked about this right when I first jumped on the channel, that sometimes developers can't tell what's real and what's not. And so the more information they can get, and the more they can sort of delve into where people really do want to spend their money and do feel comfortable purchasing, I think we're going to see a lot of them taking these odd chances. And it won't just be Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. We'll see it from the Activisions, the EAs, those kind of people. And remember, those companies, they're all friends, but guess what? You can bet your ass, like Microsoft's Xbox Pass has made EA go, you know, they're all friends. Yeah. They're all shaking hands and they're patting each other on the back, but behind the scenes they're like, okay, so they're offering this for this much, we're offering this for this much, what do we do? And that's good. That's the type of competition we want in games.
No, exactly. Yeah. I got to get going too, by the way, so probably should wrap it up.
Yeah, may as well then. Yeah, we're about to hit the 2 hour mark anyway. Well, Mitchell, thank you so much for joining us, for offering your thoughts and sharing your story about doing some QA at Bethesda. It's honestly really insightful stuff, and it's freaking awesome to hear about it. You know, I don't think that type of stuff gets a lot of light shed on it. So really, man, thank you, especially for contacting me and letting me know. Because, like,
of course.
That's the awesome part, is that you reached out and were like, hey, I do this, man. I was like, dude, come the fuck on. Let's go.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So so I'm on Twitter all the time. So if you're interested in following me, my Twitter handle is Watfin64. So it's spelled W.
Got it all on screen, bro. Got you covered.
Oh, okay.
Pretty on screen,
all right.
Anyway.
All right, good. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure that.
All right.
All right,
awesome.
Cool. Well, thank you everyone for listening this far. If you did, we don't have a hashtag this week. Oh shit.
Hashtag QA.
Hashtag Shogo rocks. Actually, Shogo does not get enough love. Shogo does not get enough love. That is a classic. So I'm glad Mitch likes it.
Shogo rocks. All right.
I want to see how many people got to this point and tweet that. That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to follow Mitchell and we'll catch you guys in next week's episode. Peace out.
Peace out.